anyways, to kind of put some of this stuff into action, a lot of this is going to be, we'll use the GUI to kind of cheat a little bit and kind of verify what's actually happening. But of course, the name of the game here, what we're really trying to do is get better at the command line and understanding those commands, understanding that file structure, etc. Okay, so how do I open up my terminal? How do I open up and get to the command line? That certainly would be a good start. Now, if you're on an operating system that has a GUI, you probably can cheat and just right-click right there on the GUI. Most of the GUIs will have a right-click and then open in terminal option, something like that, and that's one way you could pop open the terminal. The other kind of surefire way to do it is to find like the application list. Just do a search, right? And if you do a search for the word terminal on most distributions, that would be another way that you could pop open the command line. And that's what we kind of saw in, previously, how you could open up, or excuse me, when you start up a CentOS machine, it just drops you immediately into the command line. There is no GUI, there is no mouse, nothing like that. I want to show one little nuanced difference here. As you start up the machine, like you want to pay close attention to actually where are you, and this is why I was emphasizing previously knowing the structure of the file system, right? Just knowing where you are when you're working in a command line is really, really important, because you don't always have all those same visual cues that you might have when you're working with a GUI. So you notice when I did a right click and open my desktop here in terminal, it dropped me into a location, right? It dropped me into a location. That's what it's showing me here in blue. In blue, it's showing me the location where I currently am. All right, and so of course there's a command to confirm this as well, and that's the pwd command. So when you're starting out, many times it's important to understand where in that file system did I get dropped in? Where am I starting? Okay, where am I and where do I go from here? All right, so running the pwd command, it stands for print working directory. So you can see where in the file system you currently are. And I happen to open this up and it says /home/sandbox/desktop. It's like, okay, so why does it say that? It's like, well, this is the location in the file system where I currently am. And remember, I'm logged into this computer as the Sandbox user. And it actually verifies that right here at the command line in green. That's why it says sandbox at sandbox-ubuntu. All right, so what you're looking at here on the command line, just by doing something simple like a pwd, you can confirm who is it that I'm actually logged in as, just by seeing right here. So yeah, opening up the terminal has inherited the user that I actually logged into the computer as. And I'm going to emphasize that because in the future, we'll certainly get to the point where we're not just going to have one user, right? On servers, you could have multiple user accounts. And so it does become important to understand, like, which user am I logged into in which terminal, especially as you start getting multiple terminals open. So this first sandbox, that's the user that we're logged in as. Now the @ sign is showing us here, what's the computer name? All right, and so this is something that I set up. I called this computer Sandbox-Ubuntu, and I gave it the user account, just Sandbox. So yeah, I wasn't too creative with the names. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward, and that's what we're seeing. So, and as you're starting to learn here, it's like, well, the Sandbox user has a folder inside the home directory. And inside the home directory, or excuse me, the home directory is located inside that location called /. And that's what we saw from some of those pictures over on Google Images from last time, right, was well, the / location is an actual folder that you could go to. This is something that kind of contains everything inside the file system. So we're really trying to emphasize, think of places inside / somewhere inside that root location. And I'm, of course, right now on my desktop. And a lot of that is because I opened up my terminal by doing a right-click open in terminal. So it opened here at my desktop. If you go to the applications and kind of just start it up this way, right, when I type in the word terminal, let's spell it correctly. So if I type in the word terminal and open it up this way, you'll notice it doesn't actually have that, right? When I do my pwd, I'm not at the desktop. So it's not that this is right or wrong, it's just realize how you actually open up your terminal might start you out in a slightly different place in the file system. And so, yeah, it's really important to understand just where am I to start. All right, it could be a reason why your screen might look a little bit different than mine. And as you start in other computers, if you're thinking about this more in terms of like the competitions, it becomes really critical because, you know, you're going to have a computer that's already been partially set up, kind of like this one. Like you didn't do the installation from scratch, right? Someone else did that for you. So when you're sitting down at a server that you've never seen before, you definitely want to just take an inventory, like who am I, where am I, what's already there, let me just look around and see what's been done before I got here. That's very useful in the competitions. That's very useful on the job as well, right? You show up the first day on the job, there's already all sorts of computers and servers that have already been set up. You want to learn a little bit about what's been done before you got there, all right? So learning places like where am I and all that becomes really critical. Now, if you're at this location here, the /home/sandbox location, not in the desktop, it also becomes important to say, well, how do I start looking around, right? So you can tell where you are using the pwd command. Okay, great. Well, how do I start looking at what's actually the contents of this location? And that's where the ls command comes into play. So ls allows you to list what's the contents of your current location. And so if you're in /home/sandbox as this home location, as the starting out place, you'll see that you have the typical folders you might expect for a user account. Things like desktop and documents, download, music, pictures, all that stuff. All right. And so these are different folders that are located inside the desktop, inside the sandbox location. And that's why when I started the terminal the other way by right-clicking on the desktop and saying open in terminal, right, you would get different results if you LS'd here, because I'm not on the sandbox folder here, I'm on the desktop. And as we can see, it's like, well, there's no files or folders there on the desktop. So you're going to get some slightly different results based on where you are. And it's not like that's right or wrong, that's right. That's the whole point about these videos, is to just become comfortable identifying where you are, seeing what's in the location, and moving around. All right. So having said that, now that we can kind of see where I am in the file system and see what some of the contents are, where I am, where I start out here in my home directory in this /home/sandbox for the sandbox user, let's go to the top of the file system. Let's see if we can start confirming some of that information that we saw over at Google Images. And so we can move around the file system, right? We saw where we were. We can see the contents of it. Well, we can move around the file system using the cd command, right? Change directory, cd, change directory. Now, this is a command that expects an argument. All right, so the cd command would like you to pass in the argument for, well, where is the location that you want to go to? All right, so I could do cd space, and then we're learning, well, / is an actual location. / is that root folder that contains the entire file system. So I'm going to have cd space, and then I'll do a /. Make sure you do the one that's the question mark, not the one that's above enter. That would be the wrong /. Okay, the types of / you use certainly matters. All right, so I'm going to do cd space / and then we'll see what happens. Now, something you should notice immediately when this happens, of course, is in blue, right before the $sign, it kind of shows you like, hey, it just switched to /. So we'll see what the tilde means in just a second, but it's like, yeah, your command line starts to try to confirm and try to tell you this is where you're currently located. All right, so yeah, it has changed to the /. And if I do my pwd now, right, we can do a print working directory and see, yeah, I'm no longer in /home/sandbox. Now I'm at the root location. Now I'm all the way up to /. Okay, great. Well, what's inside /? All right, let's see if we can confirm some of that stuff that we kind of saw before in the pictures. Like, well, I could do an ls, right? ls will show me what's currently inside /. And from here, it's like, well, yeah, there's some of the folders we saw before, right? We've got things like bin and boot and dev and etc and home and these other locations, var and sys and temp and all right, yeah. So you've got a bunch of locations that are here inside your / folder. But if you take a quick look over to some of these Google Images, you'll see some of them might be a little bit different. Right? It's not like every single picture has exactly the same stuff of what I was just looking at. And partially the reason why is, I'm sure a lot of these pictures are just looking at a certain level of detail. They're not trying to explain everything about everything. And so I'm sure that's part of it. Some of the pictures have simply simplified themselves to just because that's all that they were trying to show. Whereas other pictures might be a little bit more specific to a different distribution, right? If we did that same command on a Kali distribution or on the CentOS distribution, those commands that we just ran, they probably, yeah, they'd still work. I'd still be able to cd to /, I'd still be able to do my ls to see what's inside there, but I might have a little bit of differences between what are the types of files and folders that might actually show up at that location. So it is important to understand that the distribution you're on will start to matter, but some of these things across all Linux distributions, they're probably going to be relatively consistent. All right, so anyway, so I've now found my way to the top here, and I was able to see, all right, what's inside this location. All right, so what if I want to get back? What if I want to get back to where I was back here at the start, the /home/sandbox? This is where I started out from. How can I get back there? It's It's like, well, there's actually multiple ways, and I'll show a couple different ways that we can get back there to try to get some practice with navigating throughout the file system. We just need practice here. And so one of the ways that you can do this is kind of understand which folder is inside which folder, right? Starting to get a little bit more comfortable working with the file system. And so we could realize, like, inside the slash location, that's where the home directory was, right? So we actually see that when we did our ls, like home is one of the locations inside slash, and we kind of assume that from the file path up here. So yeah, this is a place that I could cd to. So from slash, I could say cd space home. And that would take me to the home directory. And now I'm in slash home. I'm no longer at slash. I'm now at slash home. And I can confirm this, right, with the pwd. Right, print working directory, and now I've got slash home. Well, what's inside there? It's like, well, I could do an ls inside home, and I could see, well, yeah, there's that folder called sandbox. It's like, okay, great. As a quick side note here, quick little trivia question, does this mean that sandbox is the only user on the computer? If I've got slash home, and this is where a user's folder would show up, is in slash home, does that mean they're the only user on the computer? And the answer is, yeah, definitely not. What we're looking at here is, yeah, this is a common place where home directories are created for users. But as we get further along and learn a little bit more about user accounts, there's definitely other user accounts that might not have a home directory here at this location. There could be other user accounts that are just not meant for humans to log in as. They're not meant for the user. They're more what we would call a system account. So yeah, if you see folders inside slash home, that probably means there is a user account associated with that, but it's not like it's a guarantee. It's not like it's a guarantee that that's the only the users that are on the system. So anyways, good little thing to kind of realize. But yeah, slash home is a common location where your average users will have home directories. Okay, it's not a bad place to start, but it's not a guarantee that those are all the users you're going to have. But nevertheless, we're just trying to navigate back to where we were, so I can cd into now sandbox. That's now something that I see here, right? And if I do my pwd, it's like, okay, I'm back to slash home slash sandbox. Now, again, if we're kind of looking at the blue here right before the $sign, it's like we see that this now changed to tilde. All right, it changed to the button to the left of one, that shift, and then the button to the left of one, that tilde character. And in a lot of operating systems, the tilde represents your home directory. All right, so it's important to understand when you are a user who's logged into a Linux computer, user accounts have a home directory. And you can represent the home directory for the user just by typing out the tilde. The tilde sign oftentimes is the same thing as typing out what is the home directory for the user. So as the sandbox user, tilde represents slash home slash sandbox. If I'm logged into a different user account, tilde is going to represent something else. So it's important to realize that tilde is based on who are you logged in as. It definitely is based on who you're logged in as. And so long as I'm logged in as sandbox, tilde will be a representation of slash home slash sandbox. So having said that, though, that's good to know and good to realize that that's something we could reference. So we went to the top of the file system and then kind of one step at a time worked our way back into where we were at slash home slash sandbox, so I could go back and see all my documents and downloads and music and all that stuff. It's like, well, let's do it again. Let's go all the way back to the top. Let's cd back to the top. I'm going to cd back to slash. All right, so here I am. I do an ls. I'm all the way back to the top of the file system. Realize you could go directly to your home directory by cding to tilde. Right? I could, tilde is an actual location that I could reference, so I could say cd space, then hold shift and press that button to the left of one on your keyboard and like, yeah, sure, cd to tilde. And that will take you directly to your home directory. All right, so knowing about the tilde and seeing what it kind of represents, yes, that's important. You just want to be careful as you start working with different user accounts. Tilde on one user is going to mean something different than tilde for another user, right? They all have their own different home directories. They're places that they call that user calls home. Okay. All right. So let's see a different way we can do this. Let's see another way. I could also cd back to slash, right? Let's get back to the top. So here I am. I'm back at the top of the file system at that root folder. You can also change directories to a location, multiple folders at a time. Right, you don't have to do one step into one folder, into another folder, into another folder. Yeah, that can be many steps, and sometimes you know exactly where it is you want to go on the computer. So you can do this by simply typing out the full file file path, right? So I could say cd2/home/sandbox. That's the location that I want to go to. And if I do it kind of there all in one step, cd2/home/sandbox, then yeah, that'll work as well. And so realize this is something that's really powerful about the command line, is that if you understand the file system, you can go anywhere on the computer. All you have to do is type out the file path. Right? Just type out where is the location that you want to go. You're one step away from every location. That's a little bit different than the GUI, right? When you've got your pictures and your mouse and you're trying to double click on things, you have to like double click into a folder and then double click into another folder and then double click into another folder. It's like it's a little bit slower as you go through some of the double clicking. Now it's intuitive, it makes sense, really, really easy for people to understand, but if you know exactly where you're going to go, at the command line, many times you can just type it out a little bit faster and go all the way from one side of the computer to another part of the computer. Like you can be jumping around really quickly if you become familiar with some of the file paths. So, and definitely that comes with practice. That takes some time. That comes with practice. Let's see another way. I've kind of shown a few ways here that we can get to the top of or get from the top to our home directory. So I'm going to CD back to the top. I've CD'd now back to /. So I've shown you can do it kind of one step at a time. You go into the home directory, then into the sandbox folder. You can do it all at once. You can jump to your home directory by doing the tilde, seeding to the tilde. Another kind of trick little way that you can do it is actually the cd command is a command that you don't actually have to give it an argument. Most of the time you do. Most of the time you're changing directories and you're passing in the argument, the file path of where do you want to go. Well, what happens if you don't give it any arguments? All right, so if you just say cd and then hit enter, that by default will take you to your home directory. All right, so the cd command without any arguments is another way to get home. So there's 4 different ways you could get to your home. You kind of work your way one step at a time, use the whole file path, use the tilde, or just type cd and hit enter without any arguments, and it'll take you directly to your home directory. Now this is a really nice thing to know about as you start working your way to the file system. Just how do I get back to a familiar place? How do I get back to my home? How do I get back to my files and my location, etc.? Very, very useful to understand. Now, as you continue on with other challenges and other stuff, you're eventually going to wander your way into more complex territory. And what I mean by that is you're going to find yourself inside some folders and you're not as familiar with it. And you got to kind of start working your way out of those folders. So it's also important to learn this particular argument that you can pass to the cd command. So with the cd command, another really useful argument that you can pass is 2 periods, ... All right, and so the cd ... command will take you one step closer to root, one step closer to the /. A lot of times people think this is like the back button. It's not quite the same as the back button. It doesn't take you back to where you were. It starts taking you closer and closer and closer to the top. It's kind of similar, but yeah, not exactly the same. All right, so if you find yourself inside some folders and you're trying to get out of the folders, sometimes just doing a cd ... is a way to start getting your way out of the folders. And if you keep doing this command again and again and again, eventually you'll work your way to the top of the file system. So let's try it. I'm going to do cd ... and we'll see how now I've gone from my /home/sandbox. I'm now out of sandbox and I'm just a /home. And if I do it again, cd ... takes me one step closer to /, and hey, within 2 steps, I was all the way back to the top of the file system. cd ... cd ... If you run cd ... at the top, it's like, well, there is nowhere else to go, right? cd ... all of these, it's just, no, you're still at the /. You're already at the top of the file system. All right, but anyways, it's good to learn how to navigate through your file system, jump immediately to locations by typing out the file path, or by using the cd ... notation to be able to kind of do that. Okay, so let's jump back to our home directory. All right, I'll cd back to home. Maybe I'll just type cd and hit enter, and that'll take me immediately there. Okay, great. And we saw inside here that there were a few different locations, things like the desktop and the documents and downloads and all that kind of stuff. Okay, great. Now, I want to emphasize here that oftentimes as you're navigating using the terminal, using things like file paths, it becomes really important to know some of the shortcuts that Linux at the command line can oftentimes do for you. And so namely, let's say we want to get back into our desktop folder. It's important to understand, number one, if I wanted to cd into my desktop folder, that this is case sensitive. So if you type out the lowercase version of desktop and hit enter, it's going to say, yeah, that's not a thing. All right, so definitely Linux absolutely is case sensitive. And so in order to avoid accidentally mistyping things as you're trying to type file paths, I highly recommend learn to use the tab. The tab is your friend. Tab is your friend when you're working at the command line, when you're working especially with file paths, because tab can auto-complete the things that you start to type. Now, in this particular case, this is a good example because if you type CD space and then just type a capital D, all right, if you hit tab once, it doesn't seem to do anything. All right, I just hit tab on the keyboard, nothing really happened. If you double tap tab, you'll see what's happening. All right, so I just double tap tab and you'll see it kind of tells you these are all of the potential folders that start with the uppercase D. All right, so I've got my desktop, my documents, and my downloads. So it will start to type them, but if there's multiple options, it doesn't know which one you want. And double tapping tab is a way to show you, like, here's the potential things that you could type out by doing this. All right, now I specifically said I wanted to go to the desktop. So as soon as I type the lowercase e for desktop as opposed to documents or downloads, you know, this is now going to be unique, right? This is the only thing that starts with uppercase D, lowercase e. And so now if I hit tab, it auto-completes the rest of it. And just like with file paths, it does add on a slash to the end of it because this is a directory. And so, yeah, that's fine. You know, when you're typing out directories, if you're changing directories, as you kind of saw earlier, we didn't type that ending slash. It's like, yeah, Linux just kind of puts it in for us. But if you use the tab key will toss it in there for us. It's like, okay, fine. So I CD to my desktop, and it's like, hey, there I am. So now I'm at tilde/desktop. Right? I do my PWD as like /home/sandbox/desktop. And that's what automatically happened when we right-clicked on the desktop, right? When I right-clicked on the desktop and opened in terminal, it just took me to this location instead of going to my home location. And it does kind of depend which distribution you're on. Sometimes you might be on a distribution of Linux that doesn't do that. When you open it at the desktop, it just takes you to your home directory no matter what. It depends a little bit on the distribution. But nevertheless, it's like, okay, great. Here we are. We've navigated our way to the desktop. And now we can hopefully start to see why might I want to use the tab key to auto-complete some things for me. So maybe I'll try navigating back to the desktop here. Or yeah, we'll navigate back to the desktop, but we'll do it from the slash location. All right, so I'll CD back to slash all the way back to the top, and let's get some practice here with the tab key, see how we can use this. So I could say something like, I want to do all this file path here all at once on the command line. All right, so if I do like CD slash and then H for home and hit tab, it was the only thing that started with H. In the case of the sandbox folder, sandbox is the only folder that's inside here. So when you hit tab once, it's like, well, this is the only thing that's even possibility. I didn't even have to type the S. All right, so sometimes you just have to type the first letter. If there's no other possibilities, just hitting tab once automatically types it for you. And then obviously we had to do that capital DE, and then we could get to desktop. And so by typing things out like that, using the tab key, you can make sure that you're not typing something that doesn't actually exist by screwing up the uppercase, lowercase, by making typos in the names. Do not sit there trying to retype all the names. There's so many files where the file's got a really long name and some crazy file extension. You're going to make typos. Just hit tab. Tab is definitely a good way to do that. So anyways, I just went from the top of my file system all the way to my desktop all in one shot, and it was pretty quick using the tab. All right, and that's what I'm emphasizing here. Using the tab key, you'll be able to start really navigating around your file system very, very quickly to common places as you become more familiar with the places that you need to go.